Sarah Mae Thompson wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her greasy hand. The old barn was hot and stuffy, but she did not mind. This was her favorite place in the whole world. While other girls her age were shopping at the mall or talking about boys, Sarah was here working on her dream machine. The 19-year-old girl had been coming to this barn every day after work for the past 2 years. Her father owned this small farm on the outskirts of Cedar Creek, a tiny town where everyone knew everyone else. The barn used to hold farm equipment and hay bales. Now it held something much more special. In the center of the barn sat a 1967 Ford Mustang. 2 years ago it had been nothing but rust and broken parts. Sarah had found it sitting behind Murphy's auto shop, where old Mike Murphy was about to sell it for scrap metal. The car had no engine, 3 flat tires, and holes in the floor big enough for a cat to crawl through. But when Sarah looked at that broken-down car, she saw something different. She saw potential. Sarah had learned about cars from her father. Ever since she was 7 years old, she had been his little helper. When the tractor broke down, Sarah was there handing him tools. When the old pickup truck needed new brakes, Sarah was watching and learning. Her small hands could reach into tight spaces that her father's big hands could not fit. By the time she was 15, Sarah could change oil, replace spark plugs, and fix most simple problems. But this Mustang was different. This was not just fixing something that was broken. This was bringing something back to life. Sarah had saved every penny from her job at Peterson's grocery store. She worked there after school and on weekends, stocking shelves and helping customers. The pay was not much, but every dollar went into a mason jar she kept hidden in her bedroom. She called it her dream jar. It took her 6 months to save enough money to buy the Mustang from Mike Murphy. He thought she was crazy, a young girl wanting to buy a car that did not even run. But Sarah's eyes were bright with determination, and Mike could see she was serious. He sold her the car for $300, which was everything she had saved. Getting the car to the barn was an adventure. Sarah had to ask her father to help her tow it with their old farm truck. Her father, Jim Thompson, was not sure about this project at first. He worried that his daughter was taking on something too big, something that might break her heart. But when he saw how excited Sarah was, how carefully she had planned everything, he decided to support her dream. The first thing Sarah did was clean every inch of that car. She scrubbed away years of dirt and rust. She removed all the old seats and carpets. She took apart everything that could be taken apart. Her friends from school thought she had lost her mind. They would drive by the farm and see Sarah covered in grease working in that hot barn, and they would shake their heads. But Sarah did not care what other people thought. She had a vision. Late at night, when the work was done and the barn was quiet, she would sit in the driver's seat and imagine herself racing down a track, the engine roaring with power, the crowd cheering as she crossed the finish line. Finding parts for a 1967 Mustang was not easy in a small town like Cedar Creek. Sarah had to be creative. She learned to use the internet to find parts from junkyards all over the state. Sometimes she would drive hours with her father to pick up a piece she needed. Other times she would order parts online and wait weeks for them to arrive. The engine was the biggest challenge. The original engine was gone, probably sold for scrap years ago. Sarah knew she needed something special, something powerful. She spent months researching different engines, reading about horsepower and torque, learning about compression ratios and camshafts. Finally, she found what she was looking for. A man 3 towns over had a 302 V8 engine from a wrecked Mustang. The engine was in good condition, but it needed work. Sarah used almost all her remaining savings to buy it. When her father helped her load it into their truck, the engine was so heavy it made the truck's springs sag. Installing the engine was the hardest thing Sarah had ever done. She had to learn about motor mounts and transmission hookups. She had to figure out the electrical connections and fuel lines. There were nights when she wanted to give up, when the project seemed too big and too complicated. But Sarah was stubborn. Her grandmother used to say that Sarah got her stubborn streak from her grandfather, who had built this very farm with nothing but hard work and determination. When Sarah felt like quitting, she would think about her grandfather and push forward. Slowly, piece by piece, the Mustang started to come together. Sarah painted the body herself, choosing a bright cherry red that would make the car impossible to ignore. She rebuilt the transmission with help from a mechanic friend of her father's. She installed new brakes, new suspension, and new tires. The interior was where Sarah really showed her personality. She chose black leather seats that she installed herself. She put in a new dashboard and steering wheel. Everything was simple but clean and functional. This was not a show car meant to sit in a garage and look pretty. This was a car built to run, built to race. The local men who gathered at Murphy's auto shop every Saturday morning started to take notice. At first they had laughed at the crazy Thompson girl in her rusty old car. But as months passed and they saw the progress Sarah was making, the laughter turned to curiosity, then to respect. Old Mike Murphy himself came by the barn one evening to see how the car was coming along. When he saw what Sarah had accomplished, he let out a low whistle. This was not the same broken-down piece of junk he had sold to a teenage girl. This was becoming something special. Sarah's mother, Mary Thompson, was proud of her daughter but also worried. She had raised Sarah to be independent and strong, but she knew the world could be hard on young women who dared to be different. She watched her daughter work in that barn day after day, and she saw something in Sarah's eyes that reminded her of herself at that age, the determination to prove that she could do anything she set her mind to. As Sarah's senior year of high school ended, the Mustang was nearly finished. All that remained was the final tuning and testing. Sarah had learned so much during this project. She could now rebuild an engine from scratch, weld metal and paint a car better than most professionals. But most importantly, she had learned to believe in herself. Every time someone had told her she could not do something, she had proven them wrong. When people said a young girl could not rebuild a car, she did it anyway. When they said she did not have enough money or experience, she found a way to make it work. The day finally came when Sarah was ready to start the engine for the first time. Her parents stood in the barn doorway as Sarah turned the key. The engine cranked over once, twice, 3 times. Then it caught, and the barn filled with the deep, powerful sound of American muscle. Sarah's father had tears in his eyes as he watched his daughter's face light up with joy and pride. This was more than just a car. This was proof that dreams could come true with enough hard work and determination. But Sarah was not done yet. She had bigger plans for her cherry red Mustang, plans that would soon shock everyone in Cedar Creek and beyond. Sarah Mae Thompson had been driving her cherry red Mustang around Cedar Creek for 3 weeks now. Every time she pressed the gas pedal and heard that powerful engine roar to life, she felt like she was flying. The car ran better than she had ever dreamed possible. But driving around her small town was not enough anymore. Sarah wanted more. It was a Tuesday morning when Sarah walked into Peterson's grocery store for her shift. Mrs. Peterson was reading the local newspaper behind the counter. She looked up when Sarah came in and smiled. "Good morning, dear. I see you driving that pretty red car of yours around town. It sure does make a lot of noise." Sarah laughed. "Yes, ma'am. She's got some power under the hood." Mrs. Peterson folded the newspaper and handed it to Sarah. "You might want to look at page 5. There's something in there that might interest you." Sarah took the newspaper and flipped to page 5. Her heart started beating faster when she saw the big advertisement. Thunder Valley Racing Championship, annual summer race, open to all drivers. First place prize $5,000. Registration deadline in 2 weeks. Sarah read the advertisement 3 times. A real race, a real track, real prize money. This was exactly what she had been dreaming about during all those long nights working in the barn. But then reality started to set in. This was not just a dream anymore. This was real, and real meant that people would be watching. People would be judging. People would be expecting her to fail. Sarah folded the newspaper and put it in her locker. She tried to focus on her work, stocking shelves and helping customers. But her mind kept going back to that advertisement. Thunder Valley Speedway was only 2 hours away from Cedar Creek. She had driven past it once with her father when they were picking up car parts. During her lunch break, Sarah sat in her Mustang in the parking lot behind the store. She pulled out her phone and looked up Thunder Valley Racing Championship online. The website showed pictures of the track, the grandstands, and the cars that had raced there in previous years. These were not backyard hobby cars like she had expected. These were serious racing machines. Cars with professional paint jobs and sponsor decals. Cars that probably cost more than her family's farm. Cars driven by men who had been racing for decades. Sarah felt a knot forming in her stomach. What was she thinking? She was just a 19-year-old girl from a small farming town. She had never been in a real race before. She had never even been on a real racing track. Her Mustang was fast, but was it fast enough to compete with professional race cars? That evening, Sarah drove home slowly. thinking about everything she had seen on the website. When she pulled into the farm driveway, her father was working on the old tractor near the barn. He looked up when he heard her car and waved. Sarah parked her Mustang and walked over to where her father was working. Jim Thompson could tell by his daughter's expression that something was bothering her. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Sarah pulled the newspaper out of her back pocket and showed him the advertisement. Her father read it carefully, then looked at his daughter. "This is what you've been working toward, isn't it?" "I thought it was, but now I'm not so sure." "Dad, what if I'm not good enough? What if I embarrass myself? What if the car breaks down? What if everyone laughs at me?" Jim Thompson set down his wrench and put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Sarah, do you remember when you were 8 years old and you wanted to enter the county fair pie baking contest?" Sarah nodded. She remembered. "You were scared then, too. You thought all the other ladies had been baking pies for 50 years and you were just a little girl. But you entered anyway, and you won 3rd place. Well, that was different, Dad. This is serious. This is racing with real drivers on a real track. And you're a real driver with a real car that you built with your own hands. Sarah, I've watched you work on that car for 2 years. I've seen the dedication and skill you've put into it. That car's not just fast. It's reliable. It's well built. And most importantly, you know every bolt and wire in it." Sarah looked at her Mustang sitting in the driveway. The afternoon sun was reflecting off the cherry red paint, making it glow like it was on fire. "But what if I'm not ready?" "The question is not whether you're ready. The question is whether you'll regret it if you don't try." That night at dinner, Sarah told her mother about the race. Mary Thompson listened quietly as her daughter explained her fears and doubts. "Honey, I remember when you first brought that broken-down car home. Everyone thought you were crazy. But look what you accomplished. You took something that was headed for the scrapyard and turned it into something beautiful. But Mom, this is different. This is competing against real racers. And you're a real racer too. Maybe you haven't raced on a big track before, but you've been racing all your life. Racing against people's expectations. Racing against people who said you couldn't do it. You've been winning those races for 2 years now." The next morning, Sarah drove to Murphy's auto shop to get some oil for her car. When she walked in, she found the usual group of local men gathered around the coffee pot. Talking about cars and sports. "Well, if it isn't our local speed demon," said Pete Murphy, Mike's son, who now ran the shop. "I heard someone's been tearing up the back roads in that red rocket of hers." "Just breaking her in," Sarah replied, trying to sound casual. "Breaking her in for what?" asked another man. Sarah hesitated. She had not told anyone except her parents about the race. But something inside her made her speak up. "There's a race at Thunder Valley in 2 weeks. I'm thinking about entering." The shop went quiet for a moment. Then someone started laughing. "Thunder Valley. That's a serious track, Sarah. Those boys up there don't mess around." "Yeah. They got cars worth more than most people's houses," added another man. "And they've been racing since before you were born," said a third. Sarah felt her face getting hot. She had expected this reaction, but it still hurt to hear it. "Well, I guess we'll see," she said quietly. Mike Murphy, who had been listening from behind the counter, spoke up. "Sarah, can I talk to you outside for a minute?" They walked out to where Sarah's Mustang was parked. Mike walked around the car slowly, looking at the paint job, the tires, and listening to the engine idle. "This is fine work, Sarah. Really fine work. But Thunder Valley is not just about having a fast car. It's about knowing how to handle that car under pressure. It's about racing wheel to wheel with other drivers at high speed. I know it won't be easy. Easy. Hell, it won't be easy for drivers who've been doing this for 20 years. But you know what? I think you should do it." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Really? Really? You know why? Because you built this car with heart. You didn't just throw money at it. You learned every system, solved every problem, made every decision. That means something. That means when something goes wrong during the race, you'll know how to handle it. But what if I crash? What if I get hurt? What if you don't and you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been?" That evening, Sarah sat in her Mustang in the barn with the engine running, listening to the smooth idle and feeling the gentle vibration through the steering wheel. She thought about all the nights she had worked on this car, all the problems she had solved, all the people who had told her she couldn't do it. She thought about her grandfather who had built this farm from nothing. Her father had told her stories about how people said her grandfather was crazy to try farming in this rocky soil, but he had proved them wrong. Sarah turned off the engine and sat in the quiet barn. Tomorrow she would make her decision. Tomorrow she would either register for the Thunder Valley Racing Championship or put her racing dreams away forever. But tonight she already knew what she was going to do. Part 3. Registration Day and First Taste of Competition. Sarah Mae Thompson woke up early on registration day. She had made her decision 3 days ago but had not told anyone yet. Today she would drive to Thunder Valley Speedway and register for the championship race. Her hands were shaking as she got dressed, but her mind was clear. This was what she wanted to do. She walked out to the barn where her cherry red Mustang was waiting. The morning sun was streaming through the old wooden doors, making the car's paint job sparkle like jewels. Sarah ran her hand along the smooth hood, feeling the cool metal under her palm. This car had become more than just a machine to her. It was her partner, her dream made real. "You ready for this, girl?" she whispered to the car. Sarah's parents were already awake when she came into the kitchen. Her father was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. Her mother was making breakfast. They both looked up when Sarah walked in. "Today's the day," Sarah announced. Her father nodded. He had been expecting this. "You want me to drive over there with you?" "No, Dad, I need to do this by myself." Her mother came over and gave her a tight hug. "We're proud of you no matter what happens." After breakfast, Sarah got into her Mustang and started the engine. The familiar rumble filled the air, giving her confidence. She had checked everything twice the night before. Oil, coolant, tire pressure, brake fluid. The car was ready. The drive to Thunder Valley Speedway took exactly 1 hour and 53 minutes. Sarah knew because she had timed it twice during practice runs. She wanted to know exactly how long it would take so she would not be late on race day. As she got closer to the speedway, Sarah started seeing other cars on the road. Racing cars being towed on trailers behind expensive trucks. Some of these cars looked like they belonged in NASCAR. They had professional paint jobs, sponsor decals, and aerodynamic modifications that Sarah had only seen on television. Sarah felt her confidence starting to slip. Her Mustang was beautiful and fast, but it looked simple compared to these high-tech racing machines. Thunder Valley Speedway was bigger than Sarah had expected. The grandstands could hold thousands of people. The track itself was a perfect oval, half a mile around with high banked turns. Sarah parked in the registration area and got out of her car. Immediately, people started staring. Not because her car was impressive, but because it was different. Most of the other cars were modern racing vehicles built specifically for the track. Sarah's 1967 Mustang stood out like a classic among computers. "Is that thing street legal?" asked a man walking by. Sarah ignored him and walked toward the registration booth. Behind the table sat a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "Hello, honey. Are you here to register for the race?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman looked surprised. "Oh, you're actually a driver. I thought maybe you were here with your boyfriend or husband." "No, ma'am. Just me." The registration process took 30 minutes. Sarah had to fill out forms, show her driver's license, and pay the entry fee, $150. It was money she had been saving for months, but it still hurt to hand it over. "Have you ever raced on a track before, dear?" the woman asked. "No, ma'am. This will be my first time." The woman's expression became concerned. "Honey, this is a serious race. These drivers have years of experience. Maybe you should start with something smaller." "I'll be fine," Sarah said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. After registering, Sarah was given a number to put on her car, number 47. She was also given a packet of information about the race rules, safety requirements, and schedule. The race was still 2 weeks away, but today there was a practice session for registered drivers. Sarah had not planned on this. She thought she would just register and go home. But now she had a chance to actually drive on the track. "Practice starts in 1 hour," the registration woman told her. "You'll need to pass a basic safety inspection first." Sarah walked back to her Mustang feeling nervous and excited. A practice session meant she would finally get to see how her car performed on a real racetrack. It also meant that the other drivers would get to see what she could do. The safety inspection was done by a man named Carl, who looked like he had been around racetracks his whole life. He checked Sarah's seatbelt, roll cage, fire extinguisher, and helmet. Everything passed inspection. "Nice work on this car," Carl said as he signed off on the inspection sheet. "You do this yourself?" "Yes, sir. Well, it shows. This is quality work. But building a car and racing a car are two different things." "I understand. Do you? Have you ever driven at 100 miles per hour with another car 6 inches from your bumper?" Sarah had not. The fastest she had ever driven was maybe 70 on the highway. No, sir. Then be careful out there. This track will teach you things about driving you never knew you needed to learn. When practice time came, Sarah strapped on her helmet and climbed into her Mustang. There were 12 other cars on the track for the practice session. Sarah would start at the back and work her way up to speed gradually. The first time Sarah drove onto the track, she felt like she was entering a different world. The asphalt was perfectly smooth. The banking in the turns was steeper than it looked from the parking lot. And the track seemed much bigger when you were actually on it. Sarah started slowly, maybe 50 miles per hour, getting a feel for how her car handled on the banked surface. The Mustang felt solid and stable. The engine had plenty of power in reserve. After a few laps, Sarah started picking up speed. By her 10th lap, Sarah was running 70 miles per hour and feeling more comfortable. The car was handling beautifully. The engine was running cool and smooth. Sarah began to think that maybe she really could compete here. Then a bright yellow race car came up behind her fast. Sarah had been so focused on her own driving that she had not noticed the other car approaching. When it pulled alongside her going into turn 1, Sarah felt a moment of panic. The two cars were running side by side at 80 miles per hour, separated by maybe 3 feet. Sarah had never experienced anything like this. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it over the engine noise. The other driver, a middle-aged man in a professional racing suit, looked over at Sarah as they went through the turn together. He seemed surprised to see a young woman behind the wheel, but he gave her a respectful nod before pulling ahead on the straightaway. That one moment changed everything for Sarah. She realized that racing was not just about having a fast car. It was about trust, courage, and split-second decisions. It was about being inches away from disaster at high speed and staying calm enough to make the right choices. After the practice session, Sarah sat in her car in the pits area, taking off her helmet and trying to process what she had just experienced. Her hands were still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but she was smiling. The driver of the yellow race car walked over to Sarah's window. Up close, he looked older than he had seemed on the track, maybe 50 years old with graying hair. "That was good driving out there," he said, "especially for someone who's never been on a track before. How did you know this was my first time?" "I could tell by how you were learning the track. You started slow and built up speed gradually. That shows good judgment. A lot of new drivers try to go fast right away and end up in the wall. I was terrified when you pulled up next to me." The man laughed. "You handled it well. Didn't panic, didn't jerk the wheel. That's important. What's your name?" "Sarah Thompson. I'm Dave Martinez. I've been racing here for 15 years. That's a nice car you built. Classic muscle never goes out of style." "Thank you. You planning to race in the championship?" "Yes, sir." Dave nodded thoughtfully. "Well, Sarah Thompson, you've got 2 weeks to get ready. Practice every chance you get. Learn the track. And remember, racing is 10% car and 90% driver." As Sarah drove home that evening, she felt different than she had that morning. She had actually driven on Thunder Valley Speedway. She had run wheel-to-wheel with another racer. She had survived her first taste of real competition. But she had also learned how much she still had to learn. 2 weeks seemed like both forever and no time at all. She had work to do. The 2 weeks between practice and race day passed faster than Sarah Mae Thompson had ever imagined possible. Every morning she woke up thinking about the race. Every night she went to sleep dreaming about Thunder Valley Speedway. Her whole life had become focused on one goal: getting ready for the championship. Sarah had taken time off from her job at Peterson's grocery store to prepare. Mrs. Peterson understood how important this was to Sarah and told her the job would be waiting when she got back. Sarah spent every daylight hour working on her Mustang, checking and double-checking every system. She changed the oil twice, even though it did not need changing. She inspected every bolt, every wire, every connection. She adjusted the tire pressure to exactly what the racing manual recommended. She cleaned and re-cleaned the air filter. Sarah wanted to be absolutely certain that mechanical problems would not cost her the race. But preparing the car was only half the battle. Sarah also had to prepare herself. She had never driven in a real race before, and she knew that meant she was at a disadvantage compared to the experienced drivers. Sarah started running every morning to build up her physical conditioning. She had read that racing was much more physically demanding than people realized. Drivers had to stay alert and make quick decisions for hours while dealing with high speeds. loud noise, and intense heat inside the car. She also spent hours studying videos of races at Thunder Valley Speedway. The track's website had recordings of previous championships, and Sarah watched them over and over. She studied how the experienced drivers handled different situations, where they positioned their cars going into turns, how they passed other cars safely, what they did when things went wrong. 3 days before the race, Sarah drove back to Thunder Valley for another practice session. This time she was not nervous about being on the track. She was focused on learning everything she could about racing strategy. The same group of drivers was there for practice, including Dave Martinez in his yellow race car. Sarah noticed that she was getting more respect from the other drivers now. They had seen her drive, and they knew she belonged on the track. During this practice session, Sarah concentrated on different aspects of racing. She practiced following close behind other cars to learn about drafting. She practiced making passes on both the inside and outside of turns. Most importantly, she practiced staying calm when other cars were running close to her. By the end of the practice session, Sarah was running lap times that were competitive with the middle of the field. She was not the fastest car out there, but she was not the slowest either. More importantly, she felt confident that she could handle whatever happened during the race. Dave Martinez came over to talk with Sarah after practice again. "You're improving fast," he told her. "Your lap times dropped by almost 2 seconds since last week. I've been studying videos and working on the car. It shows. But let me give you some advice about race day. When that green flag drops and 24 cars are charging into the first turn, it's going to be chaos. Cars will be everywhere. Don't try to make up positions right away. Be patient. Let the aggressive drivers make mistakes and then capitalize on those mistakes. What if I get trapped behind slow cars? Better to be behind a slow car than upside down in the wall. Sarah, you've got a good car and you're learning to be a good driver. But experience takes time. Don't try to win this race in the first 10 laps." Sarah nodded, understanding what Dave was telling her. Patience would be her strategy. The night before the race, Sarah could not sleep. She lay in bed going over everything in her mind. She visualized the start of the race, the first turn, different scenarios that might happen. She thought about her car, wondering if there was anything else she should have checked or adjusted. Finally, she got up and went out to the barn. Her cherry red Mustang sat there in the darkness, ready for tomorrow's challenge. Sarah turned on the overhead light and walked around the car one more time, running her hands along the smooth paint. "Tomorrow's the big day, girl," she whispered. "We've come a long way together." Sarah thought about the day 2 years ago when she had first seen this car as a rusted hulk behind Murphy's auto shop. Now it was a beautiful, powerful racing machine. More than that, it was proof that dreams could become reality with enough work and determination. Race day dawned clear and sunny. Sarah woke up early and ate a light breakfast. Her parents were both nervous and excited. Her father had taken the day off work to come watch the race. Her mother had packed a cooler full of sandwiches and drinks. The drive to Thunder Valley Speedway felt different this time. Sarah was not just going to practice or register. This time she was going to race. This time everything she had worked for would be put to the test. When they arrived at the speedway, Sarah was amazed at how many people were there. The parking lot was full of cars and RVs. Families were setting up lawn chairs and grilling food. The grandstands were already starting to fill up even though the race was still 3 hours away. Sarah drove her Mustang into the pits area and parked in the spot assigned to car number 47. Around her, professional racing teams were setting up elaborate pit areas with toolboxes, spare parts, and computer equipment. Sarah felt a little out of place with just her basic toolbox and her parents helping her. But when other drivers and crew members walked by, they stopped to admire her Mustang. The car was drawing attention wherever she parked it. People were taking pictures and asking questions about the engine and the restoration work. "That's a beautiful piece of American muscle," said one man who introduced himself as a racing photographer. "Mind if I get some shots for the track website?" Sarah was happy to let him photograph the car. She was proud of what she had accomplished, and she wanted people to see it. 2 hours before race time, all the drivers had to attend a mandatory meeting about safety rules and race procedures. Sarah found herself sitting in a room with 23 other drivers, most of them men who had been racing for many years. The race director went over the rules carefully. Yellow flag procedures, what to do if there was an accident, how restarts would be handled, Sarah listened carefully to every word, taking notes on a small pad of paper. After the driver's meeting, Sarah had 1 hour to make final preparations. She checked her tire pressure one last time. She topped off the fuel tank. She adjusted her mirrors and seat position. Everything had to be perfect. Her parents came over to wish her luck before she got into the car. "Drive smart and drive safe," her father said, giving her a hug. "Show them what a country girl can do," her mother added with tears in her eyes. As Sarah strapped on her helmet and climbed into her Mustang, she could hear the crowd in the grandstands getting louder and more excited. The other cars around her were firing up their engines, filling the air with the sound of high-performance machinery. Sarah turned the key and her Mustang roared to life. The engine sounded perfect, strong and smooth. She had done everything she could to prepare. Now it was time to race. The pace car led the field of 24 cars out onto the track for the warm-up laps. Sarah was starting in 22nd position near the back of the field. She had qualified there based on her practice times, but she did not mind. Starting in the back meant she could see what was happening in front of her. As the cars circled the track under caution, Sarah felt her nervousness disappearing. This was what she had been preparing for. This was her moment to prove that all the work, all the sacrifice, all the doubt and determination had been worth it. The pace car pulled off the track. The green flag was about to wave. Sarah Mae Thompson, the country girl from Cedar Creek, was about to compete in her first real race. The green flag dropped and Thunder Valley Speedway exploded into action. 24 race cars charged toward the first turn like a pack of wild horses. Sarah Mae Thompson gripped her steering wheel tightly and tried to stay calm as cars flew past her on both sides. The noise was incredible. 24 high-performance engines running at full power created a sound like rolling thunder that shook the grandstands. Sarah could feel the vibration in her chest as she guided her cherry-red Mustang through the chaos of the first few laps. Following Dave Martinez's advice, Sarah stayed patient and avoided the aggressive moves that some drivers were making. In the first 5 laps, 2 cars had already crashed trying to make risky passes. Sarah stayed in her lane, kept her distance from other cars, and focused on running consistent lap times. By lap 10, the field had spread out and Sarah was running in 19th place. Her Mustang was handling perfectly. The engine was strong and smooth. The car felt stable and predictable, which gave Sarah confidence to start pushing a little harder. On lap 15, Sarah made her first pass of the race. The car in front of her was struggling with overheating problems and had slowed down significantly. Sarah pulled to the inside coming out of turn 4 and easily moved past him on the front straight away. The crowd cheered as they saw the country girl making her move. Sarah's parents were in the grandstands watching every lap with nervous excitement. Her father was keeping track of her position on a piece of paper, marking down every time she gained or lost a spot. Her mother was holding his arm so tightly that it was probably going to leave bruises. As the race reached the halfway point, Sarah had worked her way up to 15th place. She was running faster lap times than she had ever run before, but she was also staying in control. The other drivers around her were starting to notice that the girl in the old Mustang was not just along for the ride. On lap 30, disaster struck for several of the front runners. 3 cars got tangled up in turn 2, bringing out the yellow caution flag. This bunched up the field and gave Sarah a chance to restart much closer to the leaders than she had been. When racing resumed, Sarah found herself in 11th place. For the first time all day, she could actually see the leaders battling for position ahead of her. The top 5 cars were putting on an incredible show, swapping positions back and forth as they fought for the lead. Sarah continued to be patient, but she also started taking calculated risks. When she saw a good opportunity, she would make a move. On lap 40, she passed 2 more cars to move into 9th place. The crowd was getting louder every time the cherry-red Mustang made a pass. With 20 laps to go, Sarah was running 7th and gaining ground on the cars ahead of her. Her Mustang seemed to be getting stronger as the race went on, while some of the other cars were starting to show signs of stress from running hard for so long. Dave Martinez, who had been running in the top 5 most of the day, suddenly slowed with engine problems and pulled into the pits. As he climbed out of his disabled race car, he looked across the track and saw Sarah's red Mustang charging through the field. He smiled and shook his head in amazement. With 15 laps to go, Sarah moved into 5th place. The 4 cars ahead of her were the same drivers who had been leading most of the race. These were the experienced veterans with the most expensive equipment. but Sarah was catching them. The announcer's voice boomed over the Speedway's public address system. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an incredible story developing here at Thunder Valley. Sarah Thompson, the 19-year-old from Cedar Creek making her racing debut, has moved into 5th place and is still charging forward. The crowd was on its feet now. Everyone in the grandstands was watching the cherry red Mustang as it closed in on the leaders. This was not what anyone had expected when they saw the country girl register 2 weeks ago. With 10 laps to go, Sarah passed the 4th place car on the outside of turn 1. She was now running in the top 3 and the leaders were right in front of her. Sarah could hardly believe what was happening. She had gone from being laughed at to running with the fastest cars on the track. The 2nd place car was struggling with tire problems and losing speed every lap. Sarah caught up to him with 7 laps to go and moved into 2nd place as they crossed the start-finish line. The crowd noise was now so loud that Sarah could hear it over her engine. This left only 1 car ahead of her. The leader was Rick Stevens, a 3-time champion who had won this race twice before. He was driving a brand new high-tech racing machine that had cost more than most people's houses. But Sarah was gaining on him. With 5 laps to go, Sarah pulled up behind Stevens and started looking for a way to pass. Stevens, who had been cocky and dismissive before the race, was now fighting for his life against a teenager in a car she had built herself. Sarah tried to pass on the inside of turn 3, but Stevens blocked her. She tried the outside of turn 1, but Stevens moved over to defend his position. The 2 cars raced side by side down the back straightaway, neither giving an inch. With 3 laps to go, Sarah made her move. Coming out of turn 4, she got a better exit than Stevens and pulled alongside him as they headed toward the front straightaway. The 2 cars were side by side, racing at over 90 miles per hour with the finish line in sight. The crowd was going absolutely crazy. People were jumping up and down, screaming and cheering for the country girl who was about to pull off the upset of the century. Sarah's Mustang had just a little more power than Stevens' car on the straightaway. Inch by inch, she pulled ahead. As they went into turn 1, Sarah was leading by half a car length. Stevens tried desperately to get back around her, but Sarah's driving was flawless. She held her line perfectly, giving Stevens no opportunity to pass. Behind them, the rest of the field was spread out, unable to catch the leaders. Coming to the white flag signaling 1 lap to go, Sarah Thompson was leading the Thunder Valley Racing Championship. The girl who had entered to jeers and mockery was 60 seconds away from an incredible victory. Stevens made one last desperate attempt to pass on the final lap, but Sarah was ready for it. She defended the inside line going into turn 3 and pulled away slightly as they headed toward the checkered flag. As Sarah came out of turn 4 for the final time, she could see the flagman standing on the start-finish line, checkered flag in hand. Her parents were screaming in the grandstands. The entire crowd was on its feet. Sarah Thompson crossed the finish line first, winning the Thunder Valley Racing Championship in her very first race. As she took the checkered flag, tears of joy streamed down her face inside her helmet. The cherry red Mustang had done it. The country girl had done it. Against all odds, against all expectations, Sarah Mae Thompson was a champion. As she climbed out of her car in victory lane, surrounded by photographers and reporters, Sarah looked up at the grandstands where her parents were crying and cheering. She thought about the long nights in the barn, the doubts and fears, the people who said she could not do it. But most of all, she thought about dreams. Dreams that seemed impossible until you had the courage to chase them. Dreams that came true when you were willing to work hard enough and believe in yourself strongly enough. The trophy was heavy in her hands, but Sarah's heart was even heavier with pride and joy. She had proven that a country girl with determination could accomplish anything she set her mind to. And this was just the beginning. The Monday morning after Sarah Mae Thompson won the Thunder Valley Racing Championship, everything changed. The phone at the Thompson farm started ringing at 6 in the morning and did not stop. News reporters, radio stations, and television people all wanted to talk to the 19-year-old country girl who had shocked everyone by winning her first race. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring at the golden trophy that now lived on the counter. The $5,000 prize money was spread out on the table in front of her. She kept touching the bills to make sure they were real. 2 days ago, she was just a girl who worked at the grocery store. Now she was a champion. Her mother answered the phone for the 10th time that morning.
Sarah, this one says he is from Channel 7 News in the state capital.
They want to come here and film you with your car. Sarah rubbed her temples. She was grateful that people cared about her story, but she was not used to all this attention. All she had wanted was to prove she could race. Now it felt like the whole world was watching her. The reporter from Channel 7 was a friendly woman named Lisa, who arrived with a camera crew 2 hours later. They filmed Sarah in the barn with her cherry red Mustang, asking her questions about building the car and what it felt like to win. "What advice would you give to other young women who want to try racing?" Lisa asked. Sarah thought for a moment. "Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something just because you're different. If you want it bad enough and you're willing to work for it, anything is possible." After the news crew left, Sarah decided to drive into town to escape all the phone calls. She needed some quiet time to think about everything that was happening. But quiet was not what she found in Cedar Creek. When Sarah parked her Mustang outside Peterson's grocery store, a small crowd gathered around the car. People were taking pictures and asking her to sign autographs. Mrs. Peterson came outside with tears in her eyes. "Sarah, honey, you have made our little town famous. The phone has been ringing all morning with people asking about you. Some reporter from a big magazine wants to write a story about Cedar Creek." Inside the store, everyone treated Sarah like a celebrity. People who had barely noticed her before now wanted to shake her hand and hear about the race. It felt strange, but also wonderful to see how proud everyone was. At the checkout counter, Sarah found Dave Martinez waiting for her. The experienced driver who had given her advice during practice had driven all the way from his hometown to congratulate her. "I had to come see the champion in person," Dave said with a big smile. "Sarah, what you did yesterday was incredible. I've been racing for 15 years and I've never seen a rookie drive like that. I was just trying not to crash." Dave laughed. "Well, you did a lot more than that. You showed those boys that racing is about heart and skill, not just money and fancy equipment." They talked for a few minutes about the race. Dave told Sarah that several other drivers had been asking about her, wondering where she learned to drive so well. "I've got something to tell you," Dave said, lowering his voice. "There were some people at the race yesterday who were very interested in your performance. Professional team owners. Don't be surprised if you start getting some phone calls." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Professional racing teams had been watching her. What kind of phone calls? The kind that could change your life. "But Sarah, if anyone offers you anything, be careful. Make sure you understand what you're getting into before you sign anything." That afternoon, Sarah drove out to the back roads where she used to test her Mustang. She needed time alone to think about everything that was happening. The quiet country roads were a relief after all the noise and excitement of the morning. As she drove, Sarah thought about her future. Winning at Thunder Valley had been her dream for 2 years. Now that she had accomplished that dream, what came next? Should she try to race more often? Should she build another car? Should she go back to her normal life and be happy with what she had achieved? When Sarah got home, her father was waiting in the barn. Jim Thompson was cleaning tools, but Sarah could tell he wanted to talk. "How are you handling all this attention?" "Sweetheart, it's overwhelming, Dad. I never thought winning one race would cause such a big fuss." Her father set down the wrench he was cleaning and looked at his daughter seriously. "Sarah, what you did was special. You didn't just win a race. You proved that a person can accomplish anything if they work hard enough and believe in themselves. That's a powerful message. But what do I do now? Everyone expects me to have some big plan, but I don't know what comes next. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Take some time to think about what you really want." That evening at dinner, Sarah's mother brought up something that had been on her mind all day. "Sarah, I've been thinking about college. You were planning to start at the community college in the fall. Are you still going to do that?" Sarah had forgotten about college with everything else that was happening. She had been planning to study business and maybe take over the farm someday. But winning the race had opened up possibilities she had never considered before. "I don't know, Mom. Everything feels different now." The next morning brought the phone call that Dave Martinez had warned Sarah about. The caller introduced himself as Robert Chen, owner of Speedway Racing Development, a professional racing team based in Atlanta. "Miss Thompson, I was at Thunder Valley on Sunday watching your race. I have to say I was very impressed with your performance." Sarah's hand started shaking as she held the phone. A professional team owner was calling her. "Thank you, sir. I'll get straight to the point. My team develops young racing talent. We provide cars, training, and support to help promising drivers move up to higher levels of competition. I would like to offer you a chance to test drive for us." Sarah could barely breathe. This was beyond anything she had imagined. What would that involve? You would come to our facility in Atlanta for a week. We would put you through various tests to evaluate your skills and potential. If things go well, we might offer you a development contract. A development contract. We would provide you with a race car and enter you in regional racing series. You would compete against other young drivers from around the country. Think of it as racing college. Sarah asked Mr. Chen to explain more about the program. He told her about other drivers they had developed who had gone on to race in major professional series. Some had even made it to NASCAR. This is a big decision, Miss Thompson. You would need to move to Atlanta and commit to racing full-time. It's not something to take lightly. How long do I have to decide? Take 2 weeks. Call me when you've made up your mind. After hanging up, Sarah sat in stunned silence. A professional racing team wanted her. They were offering her a chance to race at levels she had only dreamed about. But it would also mean leaving home, leaving her family, and leaving the farm that had been her whole world. It would mean giving up her plans for college and betting everything on a racing career that might not work out. Sarah walked out to the barn where her Mustang was parked. The car that had started this whole adventure sat quietly in the afternoon sunlight. 2 years ago, this car had been nothing but rust and broken dreams. Now it had carried her to victory and opened doors she never knew existed. Sarah ran her hand along the smooth red paint and thought about the choice she had to make. Stay home and be happy with what she had accomplished, or take a risk and see how far her racing dreams could go. The country girl who had shocked the racing world was about to make the biggest decision of her life.